I'm just going to waste a few seconds because I don't know if you've noticed, but when I tried to record right away, I would always get cut off, even if it was like 15 seconds later.
Yep.
So just rambling a little bit just to give it some time.
Yeah.
All right. Good morning, afternoon, evening, night, whenever you are choosing to listen to this. Hopefully you are choosing to listen to this. I am your host for a show that will be named later. I am Russ Fisher here with the awesome, amazing, wonderful, and now that I see him, beautiful Kevin Cotillo.
What's going on, Russ? I appreciate that introduction. That's really, really nice of you. And let's be honest, no one's choosing to listen. We're on a feed, so they're being forced to listen right now because they like the dummies.
Yes, thank you, DFPN Network, the best and only network in town, for letting us, I guess, just bother your ear holes with whatever the hell we're going to be talking about.
That's right.
So, like we said, not completely sure how this is going to go, where it's going to go. No idea what it's going to be called right now, but we're going to have fun, and that's what matters. So the thesis, we'll call it to sound smart, of our show, we are going to each week, month, quarter, decade, depending on how often we get to do this, each of us are going to pick one trade. Then we are going to separately record our feelings about the trade, which we prefer, how we feel about the value, all of that stuff. After we record them ourselves, we then listen to the other person's thoughts. This way, neither of us can be influenced by what the other person says. And then after we listen to each other, we hop on here, we talk, and we tell each other how wrong we think that person is. Because hopefully we don't agree about everything. Hopefully. We don't today, so that's a good start, right?
That is a good start. I think we picked a couple of good trades to start off with. And, we'll have a little bit of a disagreement here, but we'll give some good information. And hopefully someone somewhere will be able to use that in their dynasty league.
As long as they don't hate it, that's all I care about. I begged and pleaded for literally months to be part of this network, and I don't want to get thrown out this quickly. So,
well, tying yourself to me was a bad choice in that regard, but we'll see what we can do.
Well, Zach and Kyle said I needed to start at the bottom and work my way up. So.
Fair enough.
All right. So did I explain well? We good to go?
I think you explained it perfectly. We will give our non-biased opinions. You'll hear some takes, and I think you're good. Yeah.
Rock and roll. Let's go. First trade. This league is 12-team, PPR, one quarterback. Everything's dynasty because who cares about trading and not dynasty? This trade, Christian McCaffrey for Josh Jacobs and the 102. And here's where you'll splice in.
Yep.
Actually, no. We should be like say something along as like, okay, here's the takes, maybe.
Yeah, something in that regard. Yeah. Like so since it's the first one, let's do something like, so that's the trade. Yeah, here's our unbiased takes before we get into the argument. Kind of something like.
Okay, so here are our unbiased takes on this, our first trade of the show. All right, so I figure to make some sort of resemblance of order, my trade, play mine first, your trade, play yours first.
Yep, that's what I was thinking as well.
All right, so I'll start arguing just because I know what I want to argue about.
Mm-hmm.
See, now I mostly agree with everything Kevin said. My biggest issue with this is your only outcome of all of this is possible minor regression for Christian McCaffrey. And let's face it, that dude kind of broke fantasy football this year. This is David Johnson 2014, whatever year that was. And I'm not saying he's going to turn into David Johnson this year, which means a linebacker playing running back. But new offense, new quarterback. Greg Olson's gone, which means Ian Thomas, who I am a fan of, will be catching more passes, hopefully, fingers crossed. So, again, not in any stretch of anyone's the most imaginative person's in the world imagination am I saying CMC will be bad, because he is just very good at football. But I think he has more to fall. Usually running backs don't land in the top 5 of running backs 2 years in a row. This dude was 1 or 2 2 years in a row. I just think there's more of a fall to be taken. And I agree that, just to throw my last point out, you said that there's a first difference between that would make you want to take this trade. I just kind of think we have to be realistic with what this year's firsts are being valued as. I think the 102 of this draft is 2 first rounds from last year's, 2 early firsts from last year's, no less. I see you shaking your head, so why don't you go?
Yeah, so here's my thing, and I'll start with your second point in that I get it. This year's, first round picks, particularly up in that high range, the 102, are being looked at as multiple firsts for other round or other years. But we've seen that before. And you as a dynasty player have to combat that, right? When you're making the arguments, when you're going through these trade negotiations, you have to find a way to combat that. And ultimately what you're going to push on as an argument here with that 102 is, as I pointed out in my take, you're talking about getting the top rookie or the top wide receiver. Now, who was the top rookie running back drafted last year? Do you know? On average?
Sanders,
probably, which he was close, but he wasn't the top producing running back, was he? Maybe he was. He was close. All right.
Singletary came close? I don't know.
Singletary came close. Jacobs himself came close, sure. Top wide receiver drafted, I think all consensus was N'Keal Harry at the time, right? Definitely not the top wide receiver production-wise, way off the mark there. The point being, you can miss pretty easily on that top pick. Now, I get it. This class is different. We are all aware of that. But at the same time, you have to be able to argue that, yes, that 102 is a great pick, but it's not a lock. Christian McCaffrey, while not a lock to repeat last year's, I agree there's regression coming. We're all aware of that, right? I mean, at the very least, he's not going to score, what did he have, 18, 19 touchdowns last year? He's probably not going to do that again. So at the very least, we're seeing touchdown regression on top of the fact that, yardage might dip back a little bit, but I don't know that the targets are going to change that much. So he's probably still going to get somewhere in the neighborhood of 100 catches. Hopefully he's used a little bit less on the ground as far as the number of carries that he has, but he was more efficient in prior years when he had less carries. So hopefully that efficiency kicks up a little bit when he drops back a little bit in the carry. So all this to say, while I do see some regression, I still think he's the number one running back in football next year. I think he probably scores the number one points. And even with some built-in regression, you still have to absolutely nail that 102 and assume that Jacobs increases production next year in order to still get that value. Now, all that to say, I don't hate it, but I want more. And I know in your take, you said you wanted a little more on the top, right? You thought you could get a little more. So I think we're in agreement that it needs a little more. For me, that little more is I'm starting with at least a first. I want another first.
I mean, I'll start to try for it.
It sounds like you'd be willing to take a second, though.
Yeah, if it's early enough. One QB makes it a little harder. Maybe like very, very late first, and I would be okay with it. Early second. Maybe during the draft, I'd feel better about it to see who falls. But yeah, again, you're right. We're very close to each other, but I think the gap there is kind of different. And on the plus side, we're going to end this first segment of our first show with people agreeing with you. So that should make you feel better about it. Because I really feel like everyone is putting like that pedestal way high up, and Christian McCaffrey, and how dare I say it's okay to trade him for this.
Listen, if you listen to the dummies at all and you listen to Kyle and Zach, particularly Zach, he says it on a regular basis. Get out on the running back early, get yourself some long-term wide receivers plus some picks, and or younger running backs and some picks, and build that way, right? And I'm completely with him on that. You got to churn running backs. I just think that you're going to get too much production over the next 2 to 3 years with McCaffrey still being so young that I'm not willing to give that up yet.
Yeah, I completely get it. And just so we don't drone on about the same trade for so long, I just want to end this by saying, how bad is it that not only did I forget last year's 101 when you asked me who the top drafted running back was, it was a dude involved in this trade.
It was Josh Jacobs. Yeah,
Yeah,
we're
that's
both
right.
pretty terrible there. So you know what? I think at the end of the day, as we move into the next trade, everyone can agree that we're both stupid and they shouldn't follow us.
So we completely work in on our brand of being on the Dummies Network.
That's it. We're good. All
Rock and
right.
roll.
So let's move on then. Let's keep it rolling, and we'll talk about the next trade. Obviously, I brought this one to the table, and in this particular one, we're talking 12 team super flex again. Was your super flex? I forget. I'll edit this out. You said super flex. You said non super flex.
No, the only thing I saw in the nuke trade was half
we didn't
PPR.
say super flex on mine. Sorry. Yeah. Sorry. I'll go back. I'll start over.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So we're going to talk about my trade that I brought to the table today. And again, we're going to start off with wide receivers this time because I like wide receivers. I like talking about wide receivers. We just talked about how you want to build with wide receivers and then rotate running backs, right? So we're talking about the foundations of your dynasty team, if you're thinking about it. And this trade is going to be A.J. Brown, the 107, and the 110 for DeAndre Hopkins. And before we go too far, I just want to say I love that we're into 2020 already, so we can start talking about actual picks again instead of just random firsts. It's just so much better. But anyway, let's go through the takes on this one.
That was a nice lead-in.
Thank you. So it's, I haven't podcasted in a while, but it's, it'll come back slowly. We'll get there.
I think we agreed on this one. So
I think we did too. You definitely.
See, I liked both sides of this.
You liked both sides, and actually, we both agreed that, right?
Yeah.
So,
yeah. And I mean, you started off by saying it was extremely close to you, and I think we both just said, we want AJ Brown in the picks because they're all pretty tradable.
Yeah, right. All right, so let's start going. Oh, was there something else?
No. I was going to say, I mean, just jump in. We'll figure out what the hell we're going to say about it.
Yeah. All right, so let's go ahead and talk about this one. I think we were both kind of on the same page with the beginning of this one in that this is a really close deal. I mean, you're talking about essentially three first rounders for DeAndre Hopkins. And when I look at trades, I tend to go back, and I was almost going to ask you this about the last trade that we discussed, but forget the year and the value of these picks and forget the, all of that. Put that aside for a second and think to yourself in a dynasty vacuum, what would it take to pry DeAndre Hopkins, one of the top 2 or 3 wide receivers in dynasty, away from your team? And I think when you think about it from an outside perspective, in my mind, I'm thinking the conversation starts with 3 first-round picks. So to me, when I see a guy in A.J. Brown who had an incredible first year and 2 other, later first round picks, then I think we're in good range to start the conversation. I think that's why I felt that it was so close. I think ultimately we're also kind of looking at these assets as tradable, right? Where we differ is you're not as big of a fan, I take it, that of AJ Brown as I am. So I think that's the one place where we start to differ. Like, I want AJ Brown on my team. I want this trade because I think the production you're going to get out of AJ Brown over the next 3 to 5 years is going to be close enough and not matching. I'm not saying it's matching. I'm not saying he's DeAndre Hopkins.
I like how you chose your words there.
Yeah, it's close enough that with the other 2 assets that you get in this, you can build your team with something else, and we'll talk about how in a little bit, that'll offset that production that you're losing and set you up to be more successful for a longer period of time. Now, I think most of us know that we don't play Dynasty for 10 years, right? I mean, we play for 10 years, but we don't build our teams for the 10-year window, right? We build for some people 3, some people 5. I usually look at 3. I don't know how you do it, Russ, but it's usually
when
what
I turn my teams over, it's closer to 1.
Well, there you go. So I guess in my closing opening argument here, I want AJ Brown on my team, and I want to take those 2 other assets and most likely flip them for something else.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with every single thing you said. I do like AJ Brown. He was my wide receiver 1 coming into last year. I was one of the idiots that dropped him way too low after the landing spot. I literally threw things when he got drafted not by the Seahawks. Like, I was screaming that I wanted him on the Seahawks. Uh, don't get me wrong, same college team, different wide receiver, and DK has worked out just fine. So I'm not super upset about it anymore. But I'm a big AJ Brown fan. But the thing is, I think right now, at least if you go by Twitter and ADP, his value is nuts. And will you get top 10 wide receiver numbers from him this year? I mean, probably not. So I think it really depends on how far into a rebuild you are, which I think you kind of need to be to do this trade a little bit. So if you're 1 year away, I think I start flipping. If you're 2, 3 years away, which I do love a slow rebuild, I hold on to AJ Brown because in 2, 3 years he can be that guy, and I don't argue that. These picks also, he did. I wish they told us if this was super flex or not. But the only thing I remember seeing on the tweet was half PPR. Like that 107, if this is super flex, it easily could be Judy or Lamb, which means you are building a team, which is part of the reason I love this trade. So, yeah, I mean, it's who I am. It's my brand, my personality to say everything I hear is super flippable. Everything is so valuable you'd be getting. But you can easily create a team out of these assets. And again, we're talking so much about the other side that it makes it seem like we're down on DeAndre Hopkins. Absolutely not. That dude is a stud and will continue to be a stud for a few more years. So there is, again, we started by saying this was super close. I'll end it by saying, yeah, I love this trade. I don't care. I'd be happy with either side depending on the status of my team.
Yeah, I'll say in closing on it, one difference for me, I think, is I think if I'm a contending team and I have DeAndre Hopkins and I'm offered this trade, I'm still probably going to accept it. I love DeAndre Hopkins, but I'm probably still going to take the AJ Brown and the 107 and 110. And like I said, especially if I have a third first, like let's say you won the league and you have the 112 on top of this.
I can see
so now
that.
you got
that
a
sounds like
107,
fun.
110, 112, and you're adding AJ Brown. I there's no way I can say that DeAndre Hopkins does, that doesn't make me happy to move DeAndre Hopkins for that. So I think I'd still do it.
Yeah, I can absolutely see what you're saying. I would be terrified hitting that approve button, but I think I would probably do it.
Oh yeah, it hurts.
So much fun.
It hurts, but it sounds great, doesn't it?
Man, now I think I might go. I have DeAndre on a few teams. I might go look around to try to do something.
There you go. Well, that's it for that one. Do you want to close it out? Or you want me to close it
You're
out?
talking. You might as well just close it out.
All right. Yeah, so that's it for the second trade. So hopefully you like this format. We're going to try and do it on a regular basis. We're not sure how often they'll let us do it, as Russ said at the top, but we're going to do some form of quote unquote working title split takes. And we'll do 2 trades every time, and hopefully we'll be back soon with another one. So thanks for tuning in. Make sure you follow at DFPN on Twitter or at DFP Network on Twitter.
At DFP Network, yeah.
The only network in town. You can follow me at Kevin Cotillo. You can follow Russ at Dynasty Outhouse, and someday we'll make him give us the Outhouse story on this very podcast as well. Yeah, that's it. We'll talk. We'll be back soon.
Laters.
All right.
Awesome, man. And so We'll say like this was probably like 15-ish usable minutes. Our takes were probably 2 to 4 minutes each. So
yeah, so
under a half hour show. I think that's perfect.
Yeah, I think it's great. I think we'll have 15 live and 15 or so, roughly 15 or so. Right?
Not even. I mean,
not even. Yeah, 10.
4 takes. Mine were a little over 2 minutes.
I think mine were a little over 2 as well. So yeah, so we're probably 12 minutes or so there. Yeah. That's perfect.
Awesome.
Nice little quick hit show. Love it.
Fantastic.
All right, so I'll. You want to do the first one? You want me to do it? I don't care either way. I won't have time probably till maybe like Thursday or Friday, but I mean,
what day is today?
Today's Tuesday.
Oh, I could do it. I'll do it tonight. Send it to me because I'm already recording, which means I'm going to be in the basement with someone else watching my kids. So I should hopefully be able to get it done tonight.
Okay. All right. When I can pull this, and I should probably end the broadcast. When I can pull this, I'll